Its life began in the centre of a boy's fist, with a small salty drop of sweat landed on the wooden coat of the seed. The walls were creased and felt like flesh, and all of a sudden a beam of light struck the seed, and the darkness faded. The boy holding it opened his hand and blessed the seed for heavenly light. He placed it on a brown oak bench and began to dig a hole. Before long the boy had picked the seed up, and it was once again plunged into darkness. It was alone in the darkness, suffocating in dirt, and water started to trickle down the walls and drop onto it, until eventually it cracked. It was now a little green thing poking out of a wooden shell, and it wanted out. So it clawed at the ceiling and bent around small rocks like a snake slowly edging towards freedom. As the green snake was edging towards the surface, the seed cracked again, on the bottom this time, and a whole system of brown snakes started to appear, getting tangled up and wiggling around rocks, and eventually they just stopped. As if an impenetrable wall just appeared out of nowhere, a whole maze of roots were formed, and as this happened, the snake got a boost in energy, and clawed ferociously for the surface, and eventually it saw those same heavenly lights, as gorgeous as it remembered. And as it clawed for the last time, the snake poked its head out and became a stem. The boy was back, and the stem shriveled in fear of the darkness, but the boy didn't do anything. He sat and watched and giggled. Then he got up and ran away. As the stem was back enjoying the sun, many silhouettes showed up. The boy, a smaller thing, a big thing, and somehow an even bigger thing. The stem was terrified of what darkness they would bring, but they did nothing. They just sat and watched and giggled. They seemed to emit an aura of happiness, and didn't seem to be a threat. The stem had expanded, forcing a ring of dirt up from the ground, and pushing it around. It was taller now, brown, covered in rough scales of wood. It saw the boy, much bigger now, and the tiny thing was also much bigger. They looked at the tree and cried. They hammered a cross in front of it. He was shouting, "Why him? Why now?" And the smaller thing just fell to the ground and sobbed. Another big thing came to comfort them, and they all cried together, but the biggest thing never appeared. It was night, and the tree woke up to the big thing and a rope tied in a loop. It put the rope in its mouth, and it started to climb the tree, and it struggled, but it kept going. It sat on one of many strong branches. It wrapped the rope around a branch, and it put the rope around its neck, and it fell, but not by accident, but with determination. Then it just hung there, quietly. In the morning, the smaller thing and the boy came out, shouting for their mother, and suddenly sprinted over to their mother, who's hanging from a tree. They sobbed uncontrollably. They couldn't bear to get her down, so they just left her up there, and that night they burned their house to the ground, but the tree never noticed them leave. As the big house was now gone, in its place a black field of grass, the tree noticed everything, the huge pointy hills, the smaller hills, and the fields of a gorgeous green colour. The other trees were over there as well, as they gazed across the land at each other with awe. Birds were soaring in the sky, deer and rabbits were running through the fields, and fish were swimming in the river. Many years later, the forest had expanded. More animals were here than ever, and there were thousands of little polka dots all over the grass, like gems across the field. Unfortunately, there was a storm, and as the biggest object in the local area, the tree had to take the strike of lightning, leaving the pink flowers of its canopy scattered across the field, spreading all the way to the other forest, and as the original tree died, hundreds of others started crawling to the surface, and as the cycle continued, the whole valley became known as Cherry Valley, because of one boy and his seed.